Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Alfa Romeo Driver Podcast, brought to you by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. I'm Guy Swarbrick, and this afternoon I have with me Laurence Preston from Autolusso in Bournemouth. Good afternoon, Laurence.
Hiya, how you doing? All right?
Yeah, very good. So we normally start these things by kind of delving back into the dim and dark past. How did you get involved with Alfas in the first place?
It's a long story that I never set out to, fix cars or Alfas. Engineer. I was always interested in engineering, loved cars, did engineering, mechanical and electrical engineering. And funnily enough, I worked on the railway for a few years, signalling and telecommunications. It was a good job, but I got sick of working nights because I was started at 19 and I quit at 22 just because I'd had enough of doing nights because all my mates were going out and I was going to work all weekend. And there wasn't really a choice. You had to work weekends because that's when they fix the railways. So I just quit that job at 22 years old because you can do that when you're 22. Just quit a job and not have to worry about the outcome. And I did just, a few fill-in jobs. And my brother was good friends with Ned, who at the time was importing cars, Alfa Romeos. So I took a job with him. It was a stopgap job. It was never supposed to be a career. And I took a job with him just moving cars around. It was probably the best job in the world because I just washed cars. It was great. I washed and polished brand new Alfas. So it was lovely. It was no stress. It was a great job. Just wash and polish brand new cars, hand them over to customers, collect them from here, collect them from there, drive them around. It was great. So I did that I ended up working for Ned for 7-8 years in the end. And things went really wrong because Alfa Romeo cut the supply, but I won't go into that. But that all went really pear-shaped, the importing of cars. And at that point, he'd started servicing Alfa Romeos just before that had sort of gone wrong. And I was kind of out of a job. And I was like, I'm out of a job here. I could see it. I was like, what am I going to do? So I set up an eBay shop. And we had loads of old 156s laying around that had been traded in. And some of them are broken, some of them are fine. And I just started selling the parts of them and breaking them on eBay. And we had so many bits lying around the workshop. So I just started selling anything I could. I was listing on eBay to keep myself busy and keep myself in the job. And it went from there. I set up the eBay shop for him. Now they do a lot of used parts. So I worked for him for, that's 7 years in a nutshell, really. So I did that for, 7 years and then left and set up my own business, which is what I run now, which is separate. There's 3 Autolussos. They're all separately owned. We just kind of work together on stuff. And so I left Ned's. I was going to go out on my own. He came to me just as I set up and said, do you want to share names? To which I said yes, because I thought it was going to get me a good start. When I opened the doors, I've already sort of got a reputation. And it went from there, really. So I was always mad on cars. My dad always had cars. My dad had some Alfas, had Porsches. My uncle used to work for John Hosmer, who was a Lancia dealer at the time. So as a kid, I was in the back of 911s, old Alfas. And I remember going round roundabouts and integrales in the back seat with my uncle driving and squealing around the corner when, it was a bit more socially acceptable to do that. These days, not so much. But yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's how I kind of ended up doing what I do. And I'm just car mad, really. And that's what kind of drives me to, do what I do and deliver the standard of what I do. Because, I just love cars and I love the customers. The customers are great. They're passionate. They're into the product. And they don't come to you because they have to. They come to you because they want to, which is a big difference when it comes to getting your car fixed or serviced. Because a lot of people fixing or servicing your cars are not something you want to do. It's like buying a washing machine, isn't it? For a lot of people, if you're not into cars, it's just something they have to pay for.
Yeah.
But with Alfas, I love the fact that they're coming to you because they want to, and they've got a long list of stuff they want, and so that's nice, and that's what I really enjoy. The customers and the customers and the cars really are the main 2 things which have sort of spurred me on through the years to keep doing it.
And why Bournemouth?
Bournemouth, that's another sort of story. My wife, her parents, she's not from Bournemouth. I grew up in Tring. She was from Watford, and her parents lived down in just in the New Forest. So we used to come down and see them, and we just used to look around here and just liked it. We were like, that's a nice place to live. And then I checked. At that point, I wasn't thinking of setting up an Alpha specialist. I was going to leave Ned's, leave Autolusso, and get a job in the motor trade somewhere. And I actually got a job at BMW, service advisor, and I took that job, did the interview, took the job, and then just before I was about to start, I thought, my wife said to me, and it had always been a conversation we'd had, why don't you set up an Alpha specialist and do your own thing? You'd always wanted to do it. And I made that decision, phoned up BMW, said, I'm not taking the job. And the guy was really moody with me, so I'm glad I didn't, because he started sort of telling me I was making a mistake and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, I haven't even started working for you yet, and you give me a hard time. So yeah, and it just went from there. So I looked around and I did a little bit of market research. There wasn't a lot of competition down here. You had Red Motori, which I'm sure a lot of people know about, and there's a very small place in Poole, and that's it. There's the next one's probably Bristol way. Other than that, it's further up the M3 towards London. I think there was one in Cornwall, but he's gone. So my catchment is kind of 180 degrees from, you draw a semicircle from Bournemouth. That's my whole catchment. And people come further, and I get a lot of guys from London because they don't mind the drive down the M3 because it's not too bad. You can be here in an hour and a half. So there's a little more. I wasn't moving to Bournemouth to set up a specialist. I moved to Bournemouth because I wanted to, but it was quite lucky. It was a good area to actually do it.
And how long ago was that?
10 years ago.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just gone. The 10th anniversary was June, just gone.
So in the year that everybody forgets. How long ago was that? 2 years? Oh no, it's 3 years. The COVID factor.
Yeah, the COVID factor. So yeah, it's the 10-year anniversary of my business on June the 1st. So 10
years this year, is it?
Yeah, it's 10 years this year. Yeah, it's June. So yeah, it's literally just gone because of COVID. I don't even know what month it is anymore. The whole year is gone as a blur, isn't it, for everyone?
Yeah. I don't think anybody's in the mood to have a party yet, but hopefully soon.
I'll do it next year.
Well, I think Silverstone Classic are going to do a big thing for Alpha's 111th anniversary because they missed the 110th last year.
Oh, okay, yeah, of course.
So we've got track parade and stuff. So that's all. It's all a bit weird, isn't it? You didn't plan to set up in business on your own. How did it go in the early years? Because it can be pretty tough.
Yeah, well, I had sort of planned it, and I'd saved up some money to do it, and I decided against it, and then did. So there was some planning, so it wasn't totally off the cuff. It started really well. I was lucky. I was busy from the word off. Literally the day I opened my doors, the phone was ringing, and I was getting bookings. Which is pretty unheard of. But the first few years were quite tough. I was busy enough, but it was running a business is not something I've done before. So it's hard, and finding good staff still is always one of the hardest things. I've got good guys now who've been with me for a long time, and that's important because their knowledge grows. I'm learning every day. Every day there's something, every day, every week there's something you don't know. Early days, yeah, they were tough, but they weren't as tough as I'd kind of thought they were going to be. I'd done spreadsheets and everything because I was anxious about it. I was like, I've never saved up this much money before, and I'm putting it all into this. Or if it all goes wrong, like everybody does when they set up a business, and you think, it's going to fail, and all that kind of worry that goes with it. And it took me a long time, quite a few years actually, to get past that point of thinking it's just going to go wrong. It's crazy, but it's quite a lot of. I speak to a lot of small business owners, and it's all the same. They all say the same thing. You always worry about it going wrong and what you're going to do, and but it doesn't drop off a cliff like that. Things take quite a long time to go wrong in a business, and you do have that control. Now I'm 10 years in, well established. It's much that worry has kind of gone. I'm almost too busy and can't deal with all the work I'm getting now, which is a really nice problem to have and not something I'm complaining about. But it is hard to manage nonetheless. So being too busy is a problem, but it's a good problem. So
How have the last 12, 18 months been? I know a lot of the main dealers have struggled, but a lot of the specialists that I speak to have been busier than ever because people who were on furlough or whatever have decided that they take that opportunity to fettle the car and buy parts and have work done.
Yeah, much the same for me. I've been busier than ever. I mean, I'm probably the busiest I've ever been right now. Now everything's opening up again. Through COVID, that big first scare that when they shut everything down and it was so unknown, I did furlough all my guys bar one, and it was just me and one guy. It was lovely, actually. It was like the old days. It was it was quite quiet, and we just got on with the jobs. We had loads of work already there, and we got on with that. And I found a lot of people were on furlough, so they were getting a wage, not all of their wage, but a wage. And all their holidays had been cancelled, and other things they were going to be doing, they weren't doing. So they're like, I'm not going on holiday this year, so I've got X amount of money, I'll spend it on my car instead. And that was the general consensus of speaking to people. I had some really good customers who just came to me and booked in to spend money to help me get through. Some of my long-term guys, literally they phoned up saying, I'm going to drop the car off, you can do some bits to it, help you get through it, that's for me, that's what the Alpha community is a bit like, isn't it? Everyone wants to kind of help each other out.
Yeah.
And that's what I found, people coming in, doing stuff in their cars just to, keep me busy. But we had so much work at the time, and I think I brought everybody back June last year, and everyone came back June last year, and it's been flat out ever since.
And what sort of size and shape is the business now? How many people? What's the premises like?
I've got 6 guys, workshops, 6,000 square foot. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ramps, 4-wheel alignment machine, the proper geo machine, shop blaster, engine room. Always buying things, always buying more equipment to kind of do the jobs we do. We do a lot of GTA engine rebuilds, 3.2 V6s, loads of those. So just always kind of moving forward and buying the equipment you need to kind of deliver the best job you can, and finding good people to do your cylinder and engine work and the sort of the machining work that we don't do in house. I don't think any specialist does. So the one thing I'd always wanted to do is get a paint shop, because there is one unit next to mine I might be able to get one day. I would quite like to have a paint shop as well, because then we could really see projects through from start to finish, rather than relying on someone else to do the paint work. Maybe one day, but I'm a bit too busy running what I've got. So the thought of setting up another business, I don't think I've got the time. But no, the premises has kind of evolved. It started off as half that size, and then I had the opportunity for the unit next door, so we knocked the wall through and filled up that immediately. So and it's good. Would I move and go bigger? I don't think I want to. I'm happy with the size. I don't really want more staff to manage and more guys. I think a smaller team is better, because you can keep an eye on quality. You can keep an eye on all the work going on. If you end up with 10, 12 guys, you start to lose that control of what's actually going on in the workshop. And you start to lose that face-to-face with customers, because people phone up and they want to speak to me and they want to deal with me, because they have been for the last 10 years. And that's important. And if you get too big, you can't do any of that stuff. You're there just stuck behind a computer, managing a business, and you're not speaking to people anymore, and you're not looking at the cars anymore. And I don't want to sort of step away from that, because it is the part I enjoy, the people in the cars. So for me not to be doing that and just stuck running a business and having someone else doing all of that, it's not for me. So no. I'll keep it the size I am for now. And for my sort of business, I need to know my guys, and I know them well, because some of them have been with me 8 years plus. And taking technicians on, they're so hard. They can look good on paper, they can come across well in interviews, and you don't find out. The worst thing is you never find out if someone's any good. Really, if their quality of work is good enough. It takes a few months to find that out, because they try hard for it when they start, and then they can get a bit slack. So I've had, like any business, you have to kind of get through a few people to find the best ones. And all businesses are the same, aren't they? You employ people, and they're not, sometimes don't quite deliver as you would hope. So then you move on and get someone else. So that has always been the trickiest thing, is finding good people. And
I guess with the size of the Alpha dealer network, there's not a big pool of qualified Alpha technicians to recruit from.
No, I tend to find the Alpha, what I've actually done, all my techs now have all been apprentices, and I've taken them on at 16, 17 and trained them up from the word go. So they don't come with any bad habits. They don't come with anything, I've done this before, I'll do it this way. There's none of that. They come fresh, and I take them on as they go through the apprenticeship scheme with the government. We get a small grant, which helps that time you have to put into them. It's not a lot, but every little bit helps. And I've found that's been the best way. And then you just give them the opportunity. Say, look, if you want to work here, you could be doing this, you could be doing that, and 3-4 years down the line. And and you sort of offer that, and that for me has worked really well because young guys are hungrier. I find they're keener, they're hungrier, but nowadays it's tricky to find young guys who want to fix cars. There's less out there than there used to be. I think I could be wrong, but it just feels that way. Fixing cars it's almost not a dying trade. It's the wrong thing to say, but everything's so electronic now. Everything's so digital. So building a Busso engine is almost prehistoric. It's a bit of a strong way of putting it, but it's starting to feel that way. That the technology is old in those cars, and that's the way I like it, because that's the stuff I like. I know it. I find it easy to fix and diagnose. Not easy, that's the wrong word, but familiar. It's familiar. Yeah. And so that for me is again something I enjoy. And so finding young guys. I've got a young guy with me now who's coming through college, and he started off, it was a bit touch and go, but he's coming through now, and it's really good to see that and see his keenness and his interest in cars. And and a lot of young people aren't as interested in cars anymore. I grew up around them. Cars were, I was born in 82, so the mid 90s, all the cars were cool, weren't they? Everything, the late 80s and 90s for me was, there were some great cars around then. And nowadays they don't quite feel the same, the way cars are made now. They're all too similar.
Yeah.
When I grew up, when I was about 17, 18, it was never my thing, but so many people had cars with body kits and all this stuff, and it was when I went to college, all the cars were kind of, people are really into them, and they would spend a weekend fiddling with them. And I was never into that kind of scene of modding your car to death and doing that kind of stuff. But you just don't see that anymore. People don't do that anymore, and the young people just don't seem as interested in that. I think it's because of technology, isn't it? Technology's moving on. Things are changing, and they're interested in tech and lots of other things out there. And I think that's and cars they're more generic. They're not as interesting, because I grew up around I remember watching, or not watching because it was probably a little bit before my time, but I remember all the Group B rally cars and all that stuff was just bonkers, and I used to love those things. And the Delta S4s and the 037 Stratos, all those legendary things, and even the Peugeot T16s and all those sorts of crazy cars. You just don't get stuff like that anymore. Again, I'm sort of going on a bit, but old cars for me is a really passionate thing, and something that modern cars don't offer.
I only ever saw a T16 in the flesh once, a road going one. I used to work in an office overlooking a petrol forecourt, which was a nice view. And a T16 came, and then he lifted up the entire back end of the bodywork to fill up the tank, and then drove off again. But you don't see a lot of them. No,
a mate of mine sent me a picture of one in London a little while ago, parked up on the side of the road, and it was like, wow, you just don't see that stuff.
We talked about the business. This is always an odd question for people who are in the business, because I think the highest answer I've had so far is 83. But what Alphas have you owned personally?
Oh, I've lost count. Loads. Loads. I've like 156 GTAs. Don't know why. I always drive them. Had them for years now. Had loads and loads of those. And they seem to drive better than all the other 3.2 engined Alphas. I can't put my finger on it. A lot of people agree. 147 is nice, but it just feels a little bit twitchy. The 156 is a nice car. I don't know how many Alphas I've had. I've just personally, loads. I can't even count them. But the 156 GTA for me, I still daily one now. And for me, as a daily car, it ticks all my boxes. It's rare. It's got a nice engine. It's a bit different. I can put the kids in it. It's not horrendously valuable, so you're not gonna, you put the kids in it. You don't worry too much about ruining it. And the nice thing is, it's depreciation free. You got to maintain it, but it's not going to lose money. So for me, I was thinking of replacing it and getting something else, and I couldn't think of anything.
And are they getting harder to maintain? I know there was a time when 3.2 Busso parts or GTA Busso parts were getting quite difficult to find, but I'm hearing things about them being remanufactured and it getting easier, if anything.
Yeah, some stuff is. I mean, Stellantis, isn't it? Have started remanufacturing bumpers and 147 parts. So I guess they're going to probably do the same with the 156 now, because the market's out there. So many people ask for bits. There's still a lot of trim parts you can't get. One we always struggle is the outer trims on the 156s that sit on the outside of the windows. They always rust up on the end and bubble and lose their shape, and you can't get those. But you can get a lot of engine stuff. So you can't get cranks anymore, but poor old GT 3.2s get cannibalized for all their bits. And they're starting to pick up in values a bit now, because I remember GTAs went through a phase of not being worth a lot of money, and I remember buying them for £3,000 quite a lot of the time. And I was business sense. Some cars I broke up back then for parts, and I feel guilty about that now, because some of them are actually okay cars, but economically at the time there was no money in repairing it or fixing it and selling it, so you have to keep your business head on. And so they went through, you could pick up GTAs for £3,000-4,000 all the time. And that's when they fell into the hands of the wrong owners, and the wrong guys drove them and didn't maintain them. And then they got really rough. And now they've come out the other side of that. I think a lot of those cars have either been broken up or whatever, scrapped. So a lot of GTAs I see now, on the whole, are generally very nice. I don't get, well, we call it a dog. We all call it a dog, don't we, in the world of cars. And I don't get a lot of dogs in anymore. And back in the early days, you get some really rough cars in, and they seem to have either all been restored or gone to the right people. But as the values have increased, people have, they want to spend more money on them, because they're like, well, it's worth 10 grand, so I'll spend 3 on it. But if it was worth 3 grand, they'd be like, well, I don't really want to spend 3 grand on it. And it's all about economics, isn't it? Every interesting or performance car, any brand kind of goes through that, its bottom of its depreciation curve. And unless it's something really special, of course, that doesn't happen. But, they all go through that. And my brother he's a Porsche specialist, so, cars are in our family. And, it's the same with those sorts of cars. I won't go on about other brands too much, because it's not really the point of the chat. But, old 944s, they were rock bottom, and he used to buy them just for the engine, 944 S2 for that engine, and throw the rest of the car away. And, that just doesn't happen anymore. People are, and, it's people will pay good money for rough cars now. And, it's just that old car thing, isn't it? They go through that. You could draw it on a graph, couldn't you? And they go down, and then they go back up again.
So we talked about the potential for a paint shop. We talked about having about the right amount of staff. Any other plans to develop the business? Anything you'd like to do next?
No, well, I'd love to buy my own unit, but the funds aren't there for that, because the estate I'm on it seems to be, again, about appreciation. Everything's going up quicker than I can save, if you see what I mean. So the cost of the property there is going up faster than I can kind of save money. So I'm always priced out the market. So I would like my own unit one day, but no, I'm not. I don't have any real plans. I'm quite happy with the size. I'm quite happy with the way it's running. Quality's always been the most important thing for me. I try and treat the cars as my own, so I don't want to lose that. So I any bigger, and I think I'd lose that touch.
And we talked about bussos a lot. You're kind of known as a busso specialist. Are there any other areas of specialization that you have today, or anything else that you're thinking about adding?
We do a lot of 105s now. That kind of sort of naturally happened because I went over to Sweden 7 years ago and bought a load of 105 stuff off a guy who was giving up his business. So I flew over to Sweden and bought four cars, 4 shells. I bought a 101 Spider, Julia Spider. That was a nice car, that one. A 1750 GTV Mark 1, and then 2 1750 Spiders and a lorry load of parts. And I went over there, looked at all this stuff and bought it on a bit of a whim, really. So we ended up with all these cars and these parts, and then we just started mucking around with them, and that kind of drew some 105 customers to us. And we do quite a few engine builds on those now, and a lot of guys are getting them out. I get a lot of guys locally are getting them out the garage, and they've been there for 10 years. And it's been in my mum's garage for 10 years. Can you get it back on the road? So yeah, we're doing quite a lot of 105 stuff. Obviously, standard 147s and 156s are depleting or have been depleting. We see a lot less of those these days. Even the GTs now, the diesel GTs, obviously, they're getting old and their value, and they're getting tired, so people don't spend the money on them. So or as much. Some do, but we just don't see so many. So now I'm quite happy focusing on the Bussos, because it's a great engine. It's legendary, isn't it? And the 105s. I'm trying to think where else I'd want to go. I do enjoy doing the Stratos replicas. We've done a couple of those and built a few engines for those as well. And we're doing one at the minute, which is a hill climb car, which we're building for a guy. So that's interesting, and I enjoy it. But
are they Busso based as well?
Yeah, that Busso engine. Yeah. They're the Lister Bell ones are really nice. Actually, they're a nice car, really nice kit. But the waiting list is massive to get one. Well, you can buy the chassis, but then you've got to wait ages for the panels. So I wouldn't mind building some, those one day maybe, because I'm not going to, when it gets electric, I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to stay prehistoric, as I call it. I'm not going with the electric digital stuff. I'm gonna stick with the Bussos, maybe, the Stratos thing I just mentioned. There'll always be 105s around. I know petrol cars are going to fade away, but people are always going to keep 105 Alphas on the road, because they're just lovely things, aren't they?
I think it's still about half the Owners Club members are 105 owners.
Yes, yeah, I well believe it. And guys are going to keep the GTAs going as well now, because they've turned the corner with values. They will just keep creeping up slowly, especially the nice ones. And the GT 3.2s, again, back to that car. They are turning a corner now as well. So, I'll be building them for years to come, I think. So I'll stick to what I know. Racing, racing, something I've always wanted to do. But when the kids are older and I have time, yes, I probably would maybe get involved with that. We've built, we've done one or two sort of race projects for guys, but not, we don't focus on it, not like other specialists out there. So now I'll probably stick to where we are for now. We do some Maseratis, quite a few now. They've kind of naturally come to us over the last few years. So I look after quite a few for customers, and a couple of Ferraris. So I may branch into that, but I don't want to spread myself too thin.
Okay, I think the only other question that I would normally ask is, we talked about the cars you own. There's two questions. You talked about 156 GTAs in general as being a favourite. Any particular cars that you've owned that you either really loved or regretted selling, or?
No, because I kept loads of them. All the ones I love, I've kept. So my first proper car, shall I call it? It's going to be a swear word here, and I'm going to own up to it. The first proper car I bought was 21, and I had £5,000 to buy a car, and I was having an eye on what to get. And I worked for Ned. No, 22. Sorry, I was 22. I worked for Ned, and he turned around and said, "Why don't you buy an E30 M3?" And I know it's BMW. This is a swear word, but I bought that, and so I went and bought one from a bloke in Birmingham. Did all the wrong things, bought the first one I looked at, all that kind of stuff, what you shouldn't do when you're looking at a car. But that car taught me to drive properly, because it's such a simple car, no driver aids, front engine, rear wheel drive, and it survived. I've still got it now. It is in storage. I haven't used it in years. It needs recommissioning. So, that car for me kind of taught me how to drive. So I kept that, and it was kind of just my first proper car. So I've still got that. I've got a few years ago, well, that was probably about 7-8 years ago. I've always watched car markets. It's been a hobby of mine. So I remember F40s being $100,000. I remember Dinos being $40,000. 512 BBs. I remember them being $40,000. And Dinos are like 350 now, or 300-ish, aren't they? They're all mad money and way out of my league. And I remember looking through Exchange and Mart and Auto Trader when it was, when it came as paper. And used to flick through the pages, go always straight to the performance section, forget everything else. And I just remember looking at the cars in there, thinking, I can't remember how old I was. I couldn't even drive, so I was young. And just looking at the cars in there, thinking these look so cheap. And then I always watched 355s, because I've loved the 355, like a lot of people. It's that last classic Ferrari, isn't it? So I bought one of them on eBay, as you do. Cheap. It was cheap, and it was on eBay. It's left-hand drive, early car, so 2.7. So I went over and looked at this car at this guy's house, and he had a load of other Ferraris there. And then it turned out he's the director of Wolf Race Wheels, or used to be. You didn't own it anymore. And this car was there, and it was really cheap for what it was back then. So I bought it. My heart sunk after I bought it because I couldn't really afford it, but I couldn't say no. So I bought it. I remember my wife not being very happy about the whole situation. So anyway, I left the car in my unit. I stored it for years because I wanted to sort everything out on it, and I didn't want to drive it until I'd sorted everything out on it. I got it checked out by Ferrari place before, and and that car, I think it took me 4 years to save up and buy the bits bit by bit. I'd be on eBay all the time, just buying stuff that was, either on bidding or good value, whatever I could sort of get my hands on. So I bought all this stuff and then finally did the build on the car. And when you spend so long thinking what a car's going to be like and if it's actually going to be any good.
Yeah.
I remember getting it on the road for the first time, and it was covered in dust because it'd been in the workshop for so long. It looked a right old mess. And me and my tech went out in it, had just done it all. And we thought it was going to be okay, but of its time, mid-90s, thought it might be a bit rattly, bit squeaky, bit kind of just old and not very good. But what a machine. It exceeded every expectation that I had of it. And I dailied it for a year and a half, almost, for about 8,000 miles on it in that time. And it's just stalled again now because I just need to do a bit of work to it. I haven't got any time. But yeah, it was such a good car. Even as a daily vehicle, I thought it'd be rubbish. I used it all through winter, snow, ice, everything. And it was brilliant. The headlights are great. The heaters were amazing. Aircon worked really well. Yeah, all these things that everyone says a Ferrari isn't. It was all just rubbish, And if you look at if you read about a Ferrari 355 on the internet about buying one, you just wouldn't buy one because it's just horror story after horror story. But it's all stuff like a lot of things. It's all drummed up by people who haven't actually owned these cars, and it's all regurgitated information. And you find a lot of cars are like that. And but that car for me, the 355, it ticks so many boxes, and it's comfortable, long drives, so many things it's good at. And then it's the noise and what it is. And people let you out at junctions. I'd stop at Greg's in the morning to get a coffee, and there'd be a dad with his kids, and he'd go, "Go on, son, give it up the road." All the kids watching. So that kind of, and you don't really get that anymore with cars. If you're in a new Ferrari or even a new Alpha, it's not. It doesn't get that same reception. That same reception like you do with an old Ferrari like that, because again, cars aren't like that anymore. So that for me is, I know it's not an Alpha, but it is one of my favourite cars. That 355, 156 GTA are probably some of my sort of two favourite cars that I have kept and I'll keep those two forever.
Any particularly interesting customer cars that have come in over and not necessarily name the customer, but anything that's come in you thought, wow, that's nice?
I do get swayed by the quadrifolios. They do come in, and I do think, well, they are nice, but it's just too modern for me. Too many bings and bongs is my saying. Bing for this, bong for that. I do like them. I'll tell you an Alpha that's really grown on me and really, really reminds me of the E30 M3 in the way it drives, because it's got the same balance, same power. You might guess what I'm going to say, which one it is, but it's got 50-50 weight balance. It's about 220 horsepower like an E30 M3. And that's the SZ. They're a really nice car. But I never liked the looks for years. I couldn't get around the looks. I always thought they were just weird, like lots of people. But now I think they're really cool. So yeah, we've had a few of them in. We restored an RZ for a guy. That was a really nice car. We went to town on that for him, and he was chuffed a bit. It took a long time because the paint was really hard to get right on those because they suffer from micro blistering. But no, the SZ, I prefer the SZ because I like to have a roof. I'm not into convertibles particularly. So yeah, the SZ is a great Alpha actually. Yeah, really, really proper car. And the looks do surprise everybody still to this day.
Yeah, I think it probably actually looks more modern now than it did when it came out.
Yes,
in an odd way.
Yes, it does. The front does. For me, when you look at the profile, is really good, and the square front on looks amazing. But it does look more modern. It's those three little square headlights which have aged really well.
Yeah. Okay, I think I've said I was going to ask. I had one last question about 3 times so far. This really is the last question.
That's all right.
We talked about the cars you own. Anything you would like to own? Any dream Alphas on your list still?
Our Stradale 33 Stradale is. I'd love one of them. Wow, I need to win a Euro Millions, and then I still might not have enough. That car is. Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? That thing, because it's so small. It's like the same size as a Lotus Elise.
Yeah.
I've never seen one in the flesh. Never been fortunate enough to see one, but read a lot about them, and even its numbers, its figures today, performance and everything it's still quick, and it's such a pretty car. Yeah, that for me would be my ultimate Alpha, but unfortunately, it's pretty much unachievable. I'd love an 8C. Might be a bit, because it's based on the Maserati 4200, isn't it? So it might be a bit heavy and wafty for me. I prefer things to be a bit more focused. But I'd love an 8C. That's slightly, they're not really achievable anymore. They were, but they're quickly running away, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
4C, I do like the 4C, but I think looks wise, again, I would have a 4C, but the engine, there's nothing wrong with the engine. It's just not terribly exciting, the 4C engine, but the looks, 4C and the carbon tub. But you need to finish it off and do the handling to get everything right on those. And that puts me off a little bit, because it's a lot of money for a car that needs finishing off.
Thank you, Laurence. That's all we've got time for this week. We will be back as usual in 2 weeks' time on Sunday, August the 1st at 1:30 p.m. And you'll be able to download us as usual from the club website, from iTunes, from Google Podcasts, Podbean, and everywhere else that good podcasts are found. Episode 37 will be slightly different to the podcasts we've done so far, in that it will be the first one not recorded in my home office. I sat down with Bianco Motorsport's Paul Plant and Aroc Virtual Racing League's champion Colin Cunniff to find out how he got on in his first real race in the 750 Motor Club Alfa Romeo Championship. To what extent his skills and experiences from sim racing transferred to real cars and real track, and what the major differences were. But until then, stay safe.